By finding the low spot and installing the sump there, you will make the system work great. If you have the sump or drain outlet in the high spot, then the water will have to fill up the water guard before it drains out. And this water filling up the system can cause damp spots on the floor or worse. What if you find the low spot and it's not where you can put the sump, like in the finished area? Well, there's a few options. If it's only an inch off from the low spot to where you can get the sump, then you can install the water guard deeper towards the sump. So, at the low spot, you may have 1 inch of the wall flange of the water guard showing sticking up above the floor, and have just 1/4 of an inch or less of it showing at the sump location. This way you make up for the floor being pitched away from the sump by pitching the water guard towards the sump. The second thing you can do, if you can't put the sump in the low spot, is to install a drain outlet at the low spot and run a feed pipe from the drain outlet to the sump location. We call any pipe that goes from a drainage system to the sump a feed line. The feed line is usually just a few inches long, but it can be any length. For example, if the low spot was along the back wall where a finished area is, and the sump location was along the front wall, then you could jackhammer a trench across the floor to run a feed line from the low spot to the sump. The feed line could also be run in front of the water guard back to a sump location along the same wall. With this idea, you just jackhammer the trench along the wall where the water guard is going to go a little wider and a little deeper from the low spot to the sump location, and then run the feed line pipe in the wider trench in front of the water guard. In most cases, you can install the sump at the low spot, so no long feed pipe is needed. If the floor is a little wavy here and there and it's only off by 1/2 inch or so, then install the sump wherever it makes sense. A common question is, how many feet of water guard do you have to put in before you have to go with 2 sumps? Well, we try not to have a hard number on this. 1 sump location can do around 140 feet or so. However, if you have a very wet basement, you might go with 2 sump locations in 120 feet. And if you have a big 160-foot basement that only ever leaked on 1 wall, then 1 sump location might do it. But anything over 160 feet needs 2 sumps. However, the triple safe sump system with 3 pumps has changed all this thinking. You see, what we really want in a big water guard system is to drain the system out in 2 places, not necessarily 2 sump locations. So let's say you had a 180-foot water guard system. Rather than installing 2 sump locations, you can install 1 triple safe system at the low spot and another drain outlet across the floor and run a feed line from it to the 1 triple safe location. You see, now you have the protection of the 3 triple safe pumps and just 1 sump location and 1 area to run the discharge lines from out of the house. If you do 2 sump locations on that 180-foot system, then you'd need 2 ultra sumps for backup protection. So not having 1 ultra sump makes up for the fact that you have to run a feed line, and in the end the homeowner only has 1 pump location in their basement instead of 2. And the triple safe will give you that extra capacity to pump a lot of water if it's needed. Getting 1 guy to work on the sump right away is important. If it's a wet job, you can get the water pumped out right away. And if it's not, you're going to wash the floor and walls and flood test the system before you close up the floor to make sure everything is flowing good. So you need the sump pump done by then. Install the sump and the discharge line to the exterior so you can get the pump operational.